Good morning. My name is Robert. I'm from the Citizens Foundation in Iceland. We're really happy to be a part of this virtual GovTech Week, and I'm going to talk about digital democracy and citizen participation. So, Citizens Foundation was founded as a non-profit in 2008, and coming from a long tradition of democracy in Iceland. So Iceland has one of the world oldest running parliaments. It was founded in the year 930, so it's been ongoing for more than 1100 years. And 100 years ago, the political system in Iceland was quite similar to political systems in other countries, and still today, where people can go to vote every 4 years. And people sometimes used to go on horseback, or they used to walk maybe for a few days to go to the polling place. And then they, often met the representative in the street. There's not that many people around that time. But then the modern time came quickly. We had the car in the 30s, the first computers in the 60s. The internet was with us in 1993. But the political system hasn't evolved very much. And so we actually started our work as sort of a direct response to the financial crisis in 2008. So in over a period of 10 days, all the commercial banks in Iceland went bankrupt. So and trust in society, in terms of trust in the parliament and the government, had been, for over 1,000 years, pretty good, pretty high. Obviously, ups and downs, but, often in the territory of 60-70% of people trusting in our institutions. But after the financial crisis hit, then that plummeted down to like 7%. And people took to the street and were just really surprised, how could this happen? How could this happen in a society, a modern Nordic society, that the government and the business people would sort of let the public down in this way. And we started our work. I was actually living in London at the time, and we thought, how can we use the internet to actually give regular citizens more influence? And so we started to develop open source software, and our mission is to help connect governments and citizens, and using state-of-the-art technology platforms, artificial intelligence, and so on. And we really believe that for democracy to work, for governments to work going forward in the future, we need more participation of regular citizens. There needs to be a way of having the whole of society involved in the transformation of the digital transformation of society, of the transformation that's coming about because of artificial intelligence and automation. It's not only that we need to give citizens, that we have some duty to give citizens, more participation. It's just the fact that the world is getting more and more complex. So actually tapping into the collective intelligence of citizens is a really good idea. And so we've been around for 11 years, and we now have small offices in the US, in the UK, and the Netherlands. And our solutions, our open source solutions, have helped make decision making better in hundreds of projects in over 20 countries. And for example, Better Reykjavik, and we also help the Scottish Parliament with some participatory projects. We've been doing 9 years of participatory budgeting, and mostly in Iceland, but also in some other countries, where all projects now have over a 12% participation rate, and the record is, in a municipality in Iceland, is 19.7%. So it's not the same as 60-70% in a parliamentary vote, but in a process that's growing every year and is totally online, and it's about giving citizens power, but also helping to spend the city's budgets better. That's the key element here. Spend the budget on things that are really needed and people really, want to have implemented. So I'm going to give you an overview of 3 things here this morning. Of sort of 3 parts of a solution, if you like. So the first part, and sort of our sort of main solution, if you like, is called Your Priorities. And it's an open source idea generation and deliberation platform. And then we also have a secure budget voting tool, which also has a very strong civic educational component. This is called open active voting. And then finally, and I'm going to talk shortly about this, is our new deep policy-making gamification platform, which was used for the first time to create a game about constitution making called Make Your Constitution, which we launched last year when we were doing a project with the Icelandic government about crowdsourcing some changes to the Icelandic constitutions that are sort of in the process in the government. But first, your priorities. So the key element of your priorities is to help build up trust between governments and citizens. It's an online solution that is designed for deliberation. It's not designed as a general social network or something like that. It's really designed to help bring about sort of a good dialogue, and it's been used all over the world. And the key element of it, are quite simple, is that citizens add ideas, about any subject. Is it policy, or is it about building something, or questions to parliamentarians? There's all sorts of different types of engagement, even surveys. But anyway, people add ideas, and then other people add points for and against those ideas. And we help create this sort of structured debate. And then people can vote other people's points up and down. And here are some screenshots, from it. You can see this is a project in Malta. And the key element, the key sort of feature why our solution works in actually bringing about that dialogue between citizens and government, and also between citizens in between themselves, as sort of in their common dialogue with the government, is our deliberation and debate platform. So the key of that is that it makes it really impractical to argue. It's not possible to comment directly on other people's point. So if I've written a really smart comment somewhere, and then my friend comes there and he sees how silly it is, he can vote it down, he can vote it up if he likes, he wants to support me or something, but he can't go on there and say like, hey, this is a silly comment, Robert. Nobody can. So we've actually taken away the main weapon, if you like, of trolls. People can't troll me with my idea, but also it's people really can't get into sort of personal arguments and so on. And I think it's nudges people into a bit more evaluatory mode, to evaluate things. And finally, in terms of our debating system, then it really, if there's 1,000 people who like an idea and 100 people who don't like it, and they have a debate for and against, the debate point of the minority, the 100 people, is actually at the same level in the user interface. And so it's so the minority view is not sort of over-empowered by the majority, but also for practical reasons. And when you're talking about collective intelligence, there's sometimes only a very small minority of people who actually see a big problem with something, So that's often proven itself in a solution, is that, you have some ideas that a lot of people like, but then some people come, like the party spoilers, they come in and they write a point against it that is actually right and true, and actually it, makes the idea not viable, for example. Or in some cases, actually, by pointing something negative about it, then you can change the idea to accommodate that and to make it better. That's the key to actually, using this sort of deliberation to make better decisions. So here's an example from a project in Iceland where the part of the education policy of the city was partly crowdsourced on the Better Reykjavik platform in 2 stages. And here people are debating religious issues about the New Testament. And we had hundreds of people participate in this, and we didn't have to delete a single comment. It's pretty good. A really important element of your priorities is our sort of ever-increasing use of artificial intelligence, to help with different aspects of engagement experience. So now in Iceland, we're really sort of a multi-language country with people living here from around the world. And so not everybody speaks Icelandic, but the local government wants people to participate because they live in those cities. And in some cases, in some municipalities, maybe 15-20% of people don't speak Icelandic. So we built into the platform really highly integrated machine translation. We also have recommendations, notifications. You can speak in your idea, just in voice, and we have AI that converts the voice to text. And then we also have quite a bit of tools for the city administrations themselves and the national government administrations in terms of automatic toxicity detection, where all the content that's coming in, it's automatically scanned for anything that's is toxic in terms of dialogue. And then we also have more and more sort of natural language processing analytics, including we now have ways of automatically basically using AI to calculate how similar ideas are. So we can cluster them together into similar, and if you have thousands of ideas, it's really useful to see the cluster of similar ideas, both to understand trends, but also to understand, sort of the bigger scope of why people are potentially putting in those ideas. And here on the screen you can see like a text-based version of this where the ideas are sort of brought together. But we also have a 3D version. This is like a 3D force graph that brings the clusters out in 3D. And this is sort of a so highly evolving state. Natural language processing AI is really sort of, it's in a stage of really fast evolution. It's getting better and better and better all the time. So we're really excited about this, and this is also really going to help in terms of when we have in larger projects, if you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of ideas, then this sort of technology is going to be essential. Both to find the trends, but also to find the outliers. To find the truly innovative ideas, for example. So, like you should watch this space. There's going to be a lot of, AI and that's going to be useful for, citizen and engagement going forward. So the key outcomes with your priorities is basically improved communities, but because there are better decisions. And, we're using, collective intelligence for the more ever increasingly complex world. You get useful collections of pros and cons for each idea. And for government, this is really useful. I mean, it's sort of the way that, the human brain sort of evaluates things, I mean, everybody really knows this concept. I mean, you think yourself, you're going to do something, you think, oh, it's okay, well, what are the pros and cons about that? It's a very natural thing to think and very useful for government to understand and from sort of a bottom-up way to get, more intelligence about what's happening. We have increased civic knowledge of the participants. And we have higher public acceptance and sophistication levels of when citizens' ideas are used. Here on the screen, there's just some of the projects we worked on, in Europe, and we work with a lot of, different entities and governments. I'm going to talk about a few example projects. First is Better Reykjavik. This is probably our best-known project. And we started our work in 2008. We did some experiments in 2009, but in 2010 we really had our open source platform sort of ready to go and ready for sort of the big mass experiment. And so we launched it a week before the city election in 2010 in Reykjavik, and we offered all the political parties an area on the website, and we emailed them all at exactly the same time and everything, but only one of the parties really sort of jumped on it. And that party was actually, luckily for this project, that party called the Best Party was already sort of leading in the polls. So they jumped on it and said, hey, help us to come up with our program for the next 4 years. And they did not. That party was sort of a bit of an anti-political party. They was led by Iceland's sort of most famous comedian, Jongnar, and they really didn't have any real policies. I mean, they had joke policies, like putting a giant polar bear into the children's petting zoo, things like that. But that worked, and they won the election, went into a coalition talk with the Social Democrats, and they told people, go to Better Reykjavik, help us to come up with ideas on how to improve the city and how to run the city for the next 4 years. And, quite a lot of the ideas from people then actually made it into a coalition agreement, that the Best Party and the Social Democrats went into. So it really worked. And one of the things was that one of the decisions, was that Better Reykjavik should become a part of the city website. And so we've been doing projects on Better Reykjavik now for over 10 years. And you can see here from the homepage, we actually have now over 25,000 registered users in a city that has about 100,000 people on its voting registry. And we do all sorts of different projects. I'm showing just some screenshots from my neighborhood project. This is the participatory budgeting project. And here you can see all the different neighborhoods are represented as groups in this view. So you have the downtown and all the different neighborhoods. And here you can actually see, and I really like this map, here you can actually see a map of where all the ideas are, where people, as they submitted it. And the great thing about this screenshot of this map is that the red idea dots, they basically trace the outline of the municipality. Exactly. I mean, where there are no dots, there is no municipality. There's other neighboring municipalities that actually go into those little areas that are sort of carved out. So it's everywhere. It's mass participation in a sort of a new sort of democratic process. And here, just another screenshot, with some ideas from that year. So we also worked on, and I talked about it previously, on the education policy of the city of Reykjavik until 2030. And the city used many different methods to actually contact people. They had many workshops. They invited teachers and students and so on. And they did crowdsourcing on Better Reykjavik in 2 stages: in the beginning of the process and towards the end of the process. And it was really successful in terms of reaching people and giving people a chance of on commenting on something that's really important to them. And here you can see some screenshots from that. The first part was about deciding on the high-level goals of the policy, and then the second part about the sort of implementation detail. In the University of Iceland, the Student Council has a website on Better Reykjavik where they've been doing sort of all sorts of different sort of projects. We've done projects in, for example, in Estonia, where our platform was used in a project called People's Assembly, where a lot of people took part in an online process that then went into the output of the online process, then went into a randomly selected citizen assembly. And we really like that this in terms of mixing, different types of methods, to sort of help to triangulate, what it actually means, what the will of the public, what the public wants, and to get the best ideas out. And there's a screenshot from that from an earlier version. And and actually at the end of the process, there were actually some laws passed in the Estonian parliament, for example, and all to do with improving the democratic system, and including that you could have 1,000 citizens can now send issues to the parliament that must discuss them, and 1,000 electronic signatures basically. We've worked on last year, as I briefly mentioned, on changes to the Icelandic constitution. And, again, this was really an exciting project because it was mixing together, many different types of engagement methods. So we used your priorities for an online deliberation. We created the Make Your Constitution game to help sort of with getting people into sort of the bit of a high-level view of sort of understanding a bit more about what constitutions are. We did campaigns on Facebook and YouTube, like paid campaigns, to actually promote, the participation. And then there was a deliberative poll, like in Estonia, where there's like a citizen assembly type event where 300 people randomly selected were spent a weekend, discussing the same things that were being discussed in the online deliberation and also in the game. And here you can see some screenshots from that. And we broke it down into several different subject areas. And then in each subject area, you have the individual ideas. Those are also ideas there, more ideas. And then you click on one idea, then you can see the idea, and then the debate. And we had a really good debate about all sorts of really important things. And actually, this idea on the screen is a really an important idea, that's being debated, and that's for many people important. This is about the ownership of resources in the sea, if that should be sort of coded, in a better way in the Constitution. And when people debate, they love to debate. Everybody. People have different, some people have views on some ideas, other people have views on other ideas. But, there's a lot of interesting pros and cons for all the different ideas. And I learned quite a lot. The Scottish Parliament is using the platform for several different projects. And, it's been doing the first one was about community well-being. They've been doing one about climate, policy, and the latest one they did was about COVID-19 and young people. Like that was about a month ago. So those sort of technologies, can really work on all sorts of different levels, in terms of governments, and it's being the national or European or local or even like the micro level of communities. Here's just some screenshots from the Scottish Parliament page. We did a project with the state of New Jersey, called Innovation Engine, where the state of New Jersey was basically crowdsourcing ideas from within the employees of the city. Only employees of the state of New Jersey could actually take part, and with over 2,000 employees took part. It came with a lot of different ideas and a lot of debate about those ideas, and quite interesting to see. This being used, sort of, the platform's usually been used just by citizens talking to government, but there's a sort of government sort of talking to itself. It was quite exciting. And finally, on your priorities, then, a public school in Australia has been using the platform, to teach, a class of 11 years old with about democracy, and they were really happy with this, and they sent us this nice photo. So. Next up, and is our open active voting tool, which is about budget voting and civic education. And I'm just going to go into this a little bit. It's about giving citizens direct influence on power of local government or even national government budgets, but also really to educate citizens about actually how much things cost, but also what it means to have a budget, and to help build up trust and make better decisions. So this is an example of the software. It's like a modern mobile web app. It works great on desktop, but also on mobiles, and it's actually a bit sort of gamified. You're like the mayor, and you have all the money to spend in your neighborhood. So you get to choose what ideas are used for the budget. So, and then you choose and you select, you create a sort of fantasy budget, or what you would like the budget to be. And then all of those budgets are then sent securely to the server and then tabulated, and the projects that have the most vote, then they win and they get built. And we have now, it's been going since 2011, and we have over 900 projects that have been built, in Reykjavik, just in Reykjavik, but all the other municipalities around Reykjavik have also started to do this as well. So it's really something that over time helps build up trust and helps build up, this idea that citizens can, really have an influence. And the participation has been growing sort of over the past few years, and now in Reykjavik it's at 12.5%, but as I say, we had another municipality called Mosó, which is at 19.7%. And here are some just some ideas from that have been built, some photos of projects that people came up with, just thinking about it, and then they brought it to the community, and the ideas that the community liked, they were the ones that got built, and all sorts of different things, that's really made those cities around, or those cities that those sort of processes take part, are better places usually to live. And finally, on my sort of list of tools, then or sort of list of solutions that we're sort of working on is open active policy, which is our sort of deep policy-making gamification framework. And the idea is to basically educate citizens and on the connections and on the connection between their own values and different policy choices, but also on the values of potentially somebody else, and to help sort of democratize the understanding of policy. And so Make Your Constitution, as mentioned earlier, that was the first game that was used, that uses open active policy, and it really shows, tries to demonstrate the effect of values, versus constitutional policy choices. And here are some screenshots. You have a welcome. We do a little, very light, constitution quiz in the beginning where you can, earn some what we call choice points that are then used in the game to make decisions. You basically create your own country, or you select from a list of different countries. You can do like, Iceland, in modern times, or you can do, Iran, after the fall of the Shah, to do all sorts of different types of, constitutions. And then you select, different types of constitutional sort of articles, and then you sort of start to build those together in this sort of main game interface. And then you use your choice points to basically, get your articles that you like into the Constitution. And so this is obviously constitutional law. It's not, maybe people think it's not for everybody, but what we learned, I think, the most in terms of working on this game is that actually, constitutions, are among the most sort of simple and most easy to understand laws, because those are the base laws. And they're often, I mean, most constitutions are not like thousands of pages, but, rather, concrete sort of, basis that most people, like, if they really think about it, they understand it. So finally, what have we learned? What are sort of our main sort of takeaways from our, almost 12 years, doing citizen engagement projects and creating open source software? So the key element is that participation must be fun. It can't be like participating online. It can't be like this, hugely boring bureaucratic task of some sorts. So the user interfaces need to be simple. They need to be easy to understand, and you can't like just talk sort of bureaucracy to regular people. You need to use words and so on to that sort of bring them into the dialogue in a sort of positive way, and then reward citizens. Listen to them, use their ideas. And if the ideas are not used, that people are not listened to, then we might end up actually having participation projects that decrease trust. That's not what we want. But also inform citizens, even if you're not gonna use their idea, tell them why. People want to be listened to. Don't be afraid to, say no, but just have a good explanation of the no. But the key is that, so many projects fail on communication, on marketing budgets. I mean, we've seen too many examples of governments setting up those participation portals, and then, the project starts, and basically everybody's just waiting for somebody to come. But just people won't come. It's like, it doesn't work like that today. You have to actively market anything you want people to have awareness of. People don't really go to websites anymore. They consume feeds, and to get on those feeds, you need to pay, and that's really how it is. But when you do that and using the online ads and so on, I mean, it's really intuitive, and it's not expensive, even for tiny municipalities, to spend a little bit of money to actually reach a lot of their own citizens. And finally, we are a non-profit, and we really believe that the future of digital democracy should be something that's open source, public, and developed for the common good. Thank you very much, and have a really nice day. Bye.